welcome to Krown Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan. His name is still Andrew Wadden, and we have got a jam-packed show for you. Start things out with East-West.
East Side! West Side!
Okay, if you're still watching, you do your thing.
Well, obviously I'm getting at the 13th annual East-West Bowl, Ryan. It took place at Percival Molson Stadium on the campus of McGill University in lovely Montreal. The three-day event places the best players from across the CIS who are eligible for the 2016 CFL Draft.
The East Side took little time to get on the board. Mount Allison QB Brandon Lay goes deep for Queens receiver Doug Corby. DC goes 63 yards all the way to pay dirt. Just like that, it's 7-0 for the East Side. Sorry. Still in the first, East up 8-0 now. West Side QB James Fracas from Laurier connects with Manitoba receiver Dustin Peterson. That led to a West Side score, and just like that, the East lead is cut to 1. Dying minutes of the first Q, the East begin to march. Lay over the middle to Acadia's Brian Jones. He holds on to the biscuit. That's a first down. 2 plays later, they flip the field to start the second Q. And Lucas Gavick from U of T punches this one in from 9 yards out. East Side, sorry. Take a 15-7 lead. Still in the second, and check out this hit. West Side's Ely Buka fields the punt, makes a juke. Looks like he's got room, but oh no! The hometown McGill boy, Luis Gumont Mota, labels him. That was all the scoring for the first half. The East heads into the poutine break, leading 15-7. Third Q, the West Side come out a-blazing. Fracas fires this dart to Jimmy Ralph. The little man from the University of Alberta climbs the ladder. That cuts the East lead back down to 1. But the East would respond on the very next series. Saskatchewan pivot Drew Burko pumps once, launches the pigskin into the arms of Levi Noel from U of T. That leads to this. Burko looks end zone. The cameraman gets totally deked out. Corby hauls it in. The cameraman finally finds it. That's Corby's second major of the game, setting a new East-West Bowl record. East Side now up by 8. But once again, the West respond. Western's Will Finch out of the shotgun, looks to his left. That's Jimmy Ralph hauling in his second major. That ties Corby's record. And just like that, it's a 1-point game once again. Head to midway through the fourth now, and the East put the game on ice.
Going deep. He's got a man open. Corby at the 5. Goodbye. Touchdown. Hat trick, Doug Corby.
That's a 50-yard bomb. Corby sets an East-West Bowl record, scoring 3 touchdowns. The East takes this one, 29-21. Corby was awarded the game's MVP, while Burko tossed a game-high 180 yards. Wayne Moore rushed for a game-high 86 yards in the loss. The win was the second straight for the East and the 5th in the last 6 years.
In early May, Justin Dunk on 3 Down Nation reported details of 5 former CIS players who tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs at various CFL regional combines. 4 of those players coming from the St. Mary's Huskies, including CIS Defensive Player of the Year Jay Langa, AUS All-Purpose Yards leader Melvin Abanqua, plus Marvin Golding and Kayan Marshawn Wright. The other coming out of the ROCQ, receiver Matthew Norzil of the Laval Rouge Or. For more on this story now, let's head over to Jim Mullen, who spoke earlier with Justin Dunk.
We're now joined by Justin Dunk, who broke the story on 3 Down Nation of the names of the 5 players who tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs prior to the CFL Draft. 2 of these positive tests were for something more serious. 3 of the tests were for an over-the-counter supplement. Justin, what are the repercussions of this?
Well, first of all, it essentially ends all of these 5 players' CIS careers. They'll have a 4-year ban from Canadian inter-university sport. And going forward, looking forward to their CFL futures, it essentially brings them into the league as first-time offenders. And if they test positive again for a banned substance, they will face a 3-game suspension.
Well, this has become an annual thing, and it's become somewhat of an annoyance for us who follow the CIS game. Really, when players have played those 4 years out and they don't intend to return for a 5th year, this is kind of like rolling the dice for them, isn't it? Should the CFL, or maybe more specifically the CFLPA, be more on top of this, and maybe do they want to rethink what their strategy is in terms of these drug cheats?
I think definitely that's the case. Players need to be educated on what the ramifications are if you have a positive test. Now, for me, the fact that we've had this amount of players, not just this year, but as you said, a number of years in a row, it's really a head scratcher because all of these players know when the CFL Combine is going to be and understand that there's a pretty high chance that they're going to be tested. The main Combine every year, there's normally between 50 and 60 athletes, and a number of those players get tested. So you know the date you're going to be tested, so how are you not prepared for that? For me, it really doesn't make any sense not to excuse that they're taking any performance-enhancing drugs in the first place.
Well, and the amazing thing about this, too, is talking to a number of CFL scouts in reference to the President's Trophy winner, Langa, they said by bulking up, his game and his skills were actually kind of muted. He was a big, puffy player out there. Do some of these players really know what they're getting into if they're just trying to improve numbers and sometimes sacrificing some of their skill set?
Yeah, I can't speak from the players' perspective themselves in terms of, taking these drugs, but I think you're certainly right with Langa. He added some bulk and he looked very different at the Combine and ran slower than people thought he would, and a lot of his test scores were lower than people had predicted. So I think just taking or trying to take a performance-enhancing drug doesn't necessarily make you testing better, and it doesn't necessarily make you a better football player.
Now, SMU made a statement, the CIS made a statement. I don't believe that the CFL made a statement on this, but as a head coach, as someone who heads up the St. Mary's program, who has been through a lot of turmoil, quite frankly, over the last 2 years or so, should Perry Marchese got ahead of the story on this and maybe said something in the public sphere? I
would have liked to hear from him, and I'm sure prospective parents, recruits especially, would have liked to hear from him that if players go there, there is no chance that any banned substances or performance-enhancing drugs are anywhere around that university. So yes, I would have liked to hear Coach Marchese say something.
And finally, are there any quick fixes between now and the next CFL Combine that the Players Association, the CIS, and the CFL can apply so we don't have this annual embarrassment again?
Yeah, I'm right with you, Jim, and it being an embarrassment because year in and year out, it seems we have at least one person test positive. I don't know if there's any quick fixes. I think the biggest thing is just educating these players on how making these decisions can affect them, and that making a decision like this just has no explanation. I'm tired of these kids saying, or these athletes saying, that they don't know what they're putting into your body. Everyone knows that they've made that decision to do that. So I don't think there's a quick fix. I just think we really need to support a clean game and really get that across that, with proper eating and proper training habits, you can get to be that peak athletic shape that you want to get to.
Thanks very much for this, Justin.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you having me on.
The CIS, year after year, continues to spark the interest of the NFL. With this year, several former CIS players got invited to NFL rookie minicamps. The New York Giants minicamp welcomed in Byron Archambault from the Montreal Carabins, Sean McEwen and Suk Chung of the Calgary Dinos, plus Devon Campbell of the Regina Rams and Darryl Wadd from the Western Mustangs. Joining the Giants camp were Canadian NCAA products Jacob Ruby and Lamar Durant. Manitoba Bison's receiver Nick Dembski attended the Cleveland Browns minicamp, while former Western running back Tyler Varga, who finished his playing career at Yale in the NCAA, was signed by the Indianapolis Colts on a free agent contract.
Over to the CFL now. So far, 2 CIS quarterbacks have been invited to attend CFL training camps as part of the CFL Canadian Quarterback Development Program. The BC Lions invited new UBC quarterback Michael O'Connor to attend its camp, while the Saskatchewan Roughriders will entertain Regina Rams pivot Noah Picton at their camp. Earlier, Jim Mullen caught up with Picton to chat about his outstanding opportunity.
Noah, congratulations. At the age of 19, you're being invited to the Saskatchewan Roughriders camp under the CFL Quarterback Apprentice Program. What do you hope to learn from the experience?
What I'm really looking forward to is the mental preparation. the film work, breaking down defenses, what to look for, tendencies. I think I'm definitely not naive enough to think that I know all the ins and outs of football. So I'm really going to go in there with an open mind, really soak up as much information as I can to take back to the Rams.
Now, you've been around a Rams team with both Cayman Shutter and Mark Mueller involved with the program. Mark went to the Edmonton Eskimos a few years back. What sort of experience were they able to give you in your last 2 years of being with the Rams to develop, not just for the CIS game, but perhaps for an opportunity like this?
Well, being around Cayman and Mark, we're great experience, great people to be around, especially as a quarterback. Mark Mueller, along with Bernie Schmidt, who was the offensive coordinator here, were two of the greatest football minds that I would definitely know, and two of the guys that I would really look to when breaking down defense and understanding the game of football. And Cayman was really a skilled, highly skilled quarterback. He was an NC Division I quarterback, so I tried to pick up on as many football mechanics, techniques, and different things skill-wise, on-field presence as I could from him. Putting the two together, I think it really rounds out a good package, a good starter package, if you will, for a young quarterback like myself.
Now, you had the opportunity to step in as a redshirt freshman last year, and I think you surprised a lot of people who didn't know what your skill set was all about. You're very productive for a first-year quarterback in a system that was really great for a passing quarterback. I understand that Mike Gibson might have more of a balanced attack. How are you going to adjust to that sort of change if you go to a more balanced attack?
I think a more balanced attack, it really kind of falls into the line of what a CIS program needs. Obviously, here we have Atlee Simon, Jens Johnson, and a couple of recruits coming in. So I think we're really going to have some weapons at the run game that we're going to be able to utilize well. With the pass game last year we had, as well as this year and the past few years, the Regina Rams have been known for their pass game and the receivers that we have. But moving forward, we have a young running back in Atlee, like I said before, and a mature offensive line. So I really think that we're going to be able to get some push and really get some yards on the ground.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the Rams family. You know, in terms of the Picton name, it's in 3 spots on the depth chart. It's in the board of directors. Your father was a big cog in the machine years back. I think your sister won a Canada West contest at halftime. Correct, yeah. Tell me about the family involvement in the team.
Obviously, my father, it really started with my father back in his playing days, and kind of the Rams have been in our family for as long as I can remember. Growing up around the team, I was the kid hanging out on the old lineman bags at practices when I was just a youngster growing up. And I really grew up wanting to play for this team, wanting to win. And really that's the main goal in this organization, is to win. And that's kind of what the Rams have been about and what the Rams are striving to become. So it's really a family affair for us.
I've got to ask you, with all the changes in the Canada West coming into this year, what sort of conference do you expect? I can't imagine a team winning with anything better than about 6-2. It's going to be a close one this year, isn't it?
I think Can West is by far the closest in competition-wise out of all the conferences. The difference between the first place and the last place team and the strongest and weakest teams, it's quite slim. It showed last year that any team can beat any team on any day of the week. Calgary obviously has had a step up in the recent years, but everyone's kind of closing the gap on them, and it's really going to be a tough race.
Noah, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jim. Nice talking to you.
All right, sticking with the CFL, the BC Lions announced the team will play an intimate preseason game at UBC's David Sadhu Field at Thunderbird Stadium on Friday, June 19th. The Lions will play host to the Edmonton Eskimos in front of what will be a limited capacity crowd. Thunderbird Stadium only seats just 3,500. It's still unknown if extra seating will be added for the game. Also in UBC news, a few T-Birds players took a crack at the acting game, appearing in the spring promo from Canadian Tire. Making their acting debut were brothers Terrell and Marcus Davis, Caleb Williamson, Steve Mawa, Tremont Levy, Jamal Moore-Williams, AJ Blackwell, and Dallas Yasinski. Still no word as of yet if any Hollywood producers have contacted UBC head coach Blake Nill about the availability of these aspiring thespians.
Meanwhile, the Canada West is minus a leader. Executive Director Diane St. Denis is no longer in that position. The conference hasn't made a statement just yet on the situation. During St. Denis' 2-year tenure, significant progress was made in terms of conference structure and the establishment of a league office. The conference had not announced plans for a replacement just yet. How sweet was that East-West Bowl?
No, I'm not gonna do that anymore. Got the gangster out of me now. Yeah.
But what about the West Side?
Well, you know I always represent the East Side, though. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm not going to do it either, so we're just going to go to break now. We'll see you right afterwards with the Roundtable.
Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Krown Countdown U. It's time once again for the ever-popular roundtable portion of the show. We welcome back on the far side, Mr. Jim Mullen. In the middle, Mr.
He's not here today, so we'll take the empty pumpkin.
Gord Randall is here. Not too far from when he is here usually.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta get my shots
Empty
in
pumpkin.
now. He's not here to get me back. And live via Skype from the other side of the country, Mr. Marshall Ferguson from OUA Today. Marshall, thanks for joining us.
I thought I was Gord Randall.
Sorry, you can be if you'd like to be.
That's okay. I can't play his role.
That's fair. That's fair. We're going to start things out with probably the biggest story out of the CIS lately. 5 players testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs at the CFL Combine. Let's start things out with the man with the cleanest urine in the building.
Yeah, 5 players testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and 3 of them for over-the-counter remedies. 2 of them for something a little more serious. I think the truly serious thing out of all of this, though, is that this seems to happen year in, year out. We talked about it with Justin Dunk just a little while ago within the show, and I think it's frustrating to see that this happens again and again and again. And yes, it does get attached to CIS football, but in the case of these 5 players, they were all moving on. Many of them were still not attending school. They had graduated or had moved on. And I think this is a problem that the CFL, and more specifically the CFLPA, needs to address moving forward. I would like to see a solution in this in terms of maybe giving players who test positive, instead of giving them a first-time check against their name, perhaps take a look at these guys taking a year off, being banned from football for a year, and then going back into a combine situation and going back into a draft. It gives them a second chance, but also it does give them a penalty because this is embarrassing year after year.
Yeah, I think it's just more disappointing than anything else, like Jim was saying. The communication is the biggest issue. You know, every single athlete in the CIS has to go through the CCES anti-doping protocol. We go online, we do all of the different things on the computer to make sure that we understand. But, you know, a lot of guys, like Jim said, if you're heading to the CFL, there's really not much of a penalty. Andrew Buchholz had a really great column on it, actually, about the CFL needing to change their policy on this issue. And it is more of a joke than anything else when you think about the fact that these guys can kind of slide into obscurity and find their way. Quinn Smith was a guy last year who came out of Concordia, defensive lineman, tested positive in the same situation. For what, I'm not sure, but got drafted very high by the Calgary Stampeders. I believe he played in 11 games. So he is a guy that's an example of the way that this process is, and unless we change it, nothing is really going to change with the whole system.
Yeah, but 3 over-the-counter supplements that are available commercially were used by 3 of the players. And when you take a look at that, yes, there are online components to drug education, but Marshall, is it going far enough at the CIS level? And then on the flip side of this, we talk about the CFL needing to do something. Well, I talk to a lot of people in the CFL, and they say that the key ingredient in all of this is the CFL Players Association holding up any big change. So maybe the focus needs to shift over to the Players Association being more proactive and protecting the health of these potential CFL athletes.
Yeah, I agree. And we're looking at it realistically as well. Any CIS athlete doesn't just want to sit at their computer for an extended period of time. We don't really soak things in that way. As much as that's the way that some of our university courses are structured, unfortunately, it's not a very popular way to learn. And again, I've been in CFL training camp where they brought people in to talk about anti-doping, and the players sit there, and even when it's in person, they just don't want to hear it. There's just certain groups of guys that are reluctant to accept the realities of what the penalties will be and how bad it looks on the league that they're playing in if they do get caught. And it is a bit of a Wild West right now in terms of trying to handle it across the entire league. So it is disappointing, and I agree, Jim, that we do need to have professional athletics is obviously different than our CIS situation, where any agreement between the CFLPA and the CFL needs to be made in joint decision, working progressively towards increasing, I would say, the structure and the safety of the game in a variety of ways. And if either one of those two sides are holding up an improvement for the Canadian Football League in terms of its policy on serious issues like this, then that's an issue.
Yeah, and I'll also say Jay Langa apologized to the Canadian Football League for testing positive. He should also apologize to the CIS and St. Mary's for testing positive. He walks away with the President's Award, walks away with 4 years at St. Mary's, and there's no apology going out there. He might want to rethink that statement just a little bit.
East-West Bowl, your thoughts, Jim, on the game and the event?
Well, I think in terms of the game, I think we saw two highly rated receivers that we knew were highly rated for quite some time in terms of Doug Corby and Jimmy Ralph perform up to the way we expected them to. They set the pace for offense. I haven't seen an East-West Bowl with this much offense over the years. It was pleasant to see what we saw on the field in terms of a media experience for a game that is paramount in the spring season. I would like to see something shot better than something from Drunken Uncle Productions where there's one camera and lousy bit rate, and there needs to be improvement on that. I also heard a few things from behind the scenes in terms of McGill not being prepared. In some ways we can give him a give me on this, in that there was a coaching change in terms of Clint Utley stepping down, and he was organizing things, and it took McGill a long time to get a new coach into place to oversee things. There were some jerseys missing on day one. There were some players that didn't manage to take their combine tests. There were a lot of things that dropped between the cracks. There needed to be more leadership, I think, from the CIS on this particular event, knowing what wasn't in place going in.
And Marshall, you were there in the flesh. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it started out a little bit rough in terms of organization. With all the little things that players worry about is, where's my tape going to come from? What type of tape do you have there? Is it the same as back home? Is there ice tubs? Are they available? When is physio? When is treatment? Where's my next meal coming from? All of those things. The first 24 hours was a little bit questionable, like Jim's talking about, coaching change at McGill, that may have affected it. Outside of that, in terms of the product on the field, having the coaches there, being at Percival Molson Stadium, which is an amazing venue, that turned out really, really well. And I think by the end of the week, there was not really one person. And I know because, I was eating with everyone all week, and I was there, and I was in the residence with all the athletes. By the end of the week, everyone was pretty happy with the experience, the event, and the way that the game went. I think it was very well put together by the end, and overall, I think it was a positive event.
The CIS task force will convene a day after the AGM in June. What sort of things are they going to tackle, Jim?
Well, this is something that has flown completely below the radar, I think, for anyone that follows football in Canada. The CIS back around November, but I think officially at the beginning of February, put together this task force to tackle all the problems or all the issues or all the challenges in CIS football. It consists of the 4 executive directors from each of the conferences, the president of the CIS, Therese Quigley, and they also have a coaching representative who happens to be Steve Samura of the Carleton Ravens. And, they're looking at things like scholarships, numbers of players on a roster, media and coverage, interlock, which I will not get into on the hot seat here. But I really wonder what can be achieved with a meeting that happens over the space of one day that's tacked on to the end of the AGM. I think as we've seen here with this performance-enhancing drugs issue that we have, I think that what we've seen with the East-West Bowl and a lot of the hiccups there, the challenges are already there. We know what the challenges are. We need to be present with our sleeves rolled up, working on these things firsthand, rather than thinking there's some sort of legislative way of addressing them. We have a good structure right now. Let's try to make the structure that we have better by just getting in there and rolling up our sleeves and working on it.
Well, out of a meeting that's trying to push progress, Marshall, from what you've seen in the past throughout your tenure in the CIS, working with them now, what's kind of the change rate process? I mean, do you see a lot of these mixes come in, and what something's decided at this meeting, do you see it come into play at all? I mean, does it take a long time for these things to progress?
In terms of things that they could change, there's a long list, and everyone's got their own opinions on how we can improve the game. I think the big thing is that we're having the conversation to improve the game. I think the idea of coming together, like Jim's saying, maybe for an extended period of time. I mean, I'm not sure what difference 1 day versus 3-4 at a different time would make. If it's easier to get everyone together at the AGM, things like that, logistically, to make sure that they're in the same room. But the fact that we're having the conversation at all, I think, is an improvement from where we would have been, 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
All right, we got to wrap things up here. But quick question for you. Going back to your Marauder days, for the wideouts, you're in video training. How often do they show the young wideouts coming up, the intro to our show, if you know what I mean?
Always. It was form before style. That was what we always taught. We would come back and see a guy with great athletic ability, great length, long arms, strong hands in the Marauder jersey, and we really wanted to sign him, but he was unavailable.
And great fear in his eyes, even on a studio set. Yeah.
A lifelong sponsorship with the Royal Bank. It was amazing. All right, I want to thank Marshall Ferguson for joining us live from OUA today. Jim Mullen on the far side. Gord Randall in the middle, Andrew Wadden earlier in the show. I'm Ryan Sullivan, and we'll see you in a month.